Welcome. I'm Dr. Kimberley Duff, the current president of the Psi Beta National Honor Society in Psychology. And today I am so excited to welcome Professor Art Garcia, who's going to talk to us about his career in school psychology. So thank you for joining us today, Art.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Duff. I appreciate you extending the invitation.
So why don't we kind of get started then and think about your educational background? So can you tell us a little bit about where you started and how you developed this interest in school psychology?
Sure. So I actually started in the community colleges. I went to El Camino Community College in Torrance. While I was there, I was completing coursework to become a firefighter, and ultimately decided that if I wanted to kind of improve my chances of getting into a fire department, maybe I was going to need a bachelor's degree. And so I transfer over to the California State University of Long Beach and pursue that degree in psychology, and ultimately kind of fell in love with our field of psychology, and started to really enjoy courses like research methods, psychopharmacology, and things of that nature. And then or started a master's degree in psychology with an option in research. Um, Started doing some drug research, and ultimately decided that I, as much as I enjoyed drug research, I really it really wasn't quite for me. I enjoyed working with children, working with people throughout my kind of early or collegiate academic career. I was working with children, and working in middle schools and elementary schools, supporting students who had learning disabilities or emotional disabilities, and found that type of work really rewarding. And so that ultimately led me to apply for a graduate program in school psychology, and I essentially obtained a education specialist degree and a credential in school psychology, and I've been working as a school psychologist for the last 5.5 years now.
So I learned something new about you because we're colleagues, right? We actually work together, right, at the same college. So I did not know that you started out at a community college. I think that's gonna be really inspiring for our students to hear, right? So we've got a role model of someone who started out at a community college and went on to become a professional psychologist. So that's pretty cool. But we don't always offer courses, right, in school psychology or educational psychology. So a lot of people watching might be kind of curious, what is school psychology? So what actually is that profession? So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, a school psychologist, in just a few words, is a problem solver, right? We are there in just about every K through 12 school in the country. We are there to provide support directly to students, but also indirectly. A lot of times in see the variation in behavior or in learning, but a lot of times there are always students who are going to be struggling in either in academic areas such as reading, writing, or mathematics, or they might have some sort of emotional disability like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, or they might have a developmental disorder, right, such as an intellectual disability or autism. And all of these students, they require many of these students require some level of support in order to access a K through 12 curriculum. And this is something that's federally mandated by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And so school psychologists are there to facilitate their access. We're there to identify, what are the interventions that these students need, right? Um, a lot of times folks think that, school psychologists, we only work with students who have disabilities, but we work with students who don't have disabilities. Students will at times exhibit skill deficits, right? I mean, who hasn't ever struggled with mathematics or an English class? And sometimes will struggle, and that's not necessarily a product of a disability. It's just a skill deficit. And so school psychologists can actually work with other professionals in the schools to systematically support those students who are just falling behind a little bit. And that's the more proactive side of our work. The assessment and the designing the individual education plans. Oftentimes that's post early intervention, or oftentimes kind of um, the end result of trying many other early interventions.
So it sounds like a pretty broad career, right? You've got to have a background in lots of different areas of psychology, like a little bit of theories of learning, understanding how the brain works, but also a little bit maybe from the clinical and cognitive side. But that sounds pretty rewarding. So for you, what does a typical day look like? So are you working in a school? I like how you've got your bricks behind you. Tell us, what does a typical day look like for you, and where do you find yourself employed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I work within the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District here in Southern California, and my day consists of every single day of you know touching base with either our school administrators, our school counselors, checking in on students who may be currently struggling, but also hearing any concerns or about any referrals that might be coming up the pipeline, right? And again, working with those individuals, those other stakeholders in the school, to determine what is it that this student might need next, right? And we're faced with a number of challenges on any given day. There's a lot of mental health issues out there, and in addition to that, a lot of students who are struggling academically. And a lot of times we can address that with kind of class-wide approaches, right? Working with teachers to support students. So if they're with their math skills, we can work with that teacher to maybe administer some screeners to gauge kind of some baseline skill. If other teachers are experiencing some struggle with the classroom behavior, we can work with those teachers to implement some sort of behavior management system within the class, working with those teachers to kind of build better relationships with their students. Oftentimes you hear kind of stuff like token economies, and that can be very effective. But sometimes what's even more effective is relationship building, right? Relationship building between teachers and their students. So there's no day is a typical day, right? The concerns or the need changes on an ongoing basis. And so as a school psychologist, you have to be very, very flexible, very ready to adapt to the situation as it comes your way. And as you've mentioned, it never hurts to just have a good tool set, right? A good knowledge of academic intervention, behavior intervention, social emotional intervention. All of that certainly helps.
So would you say, so your experience then as a school psychologist is you're primarily working in a K through 12 school. Is that typically the case for school psychologists, or are there other places where they might find themselves employed? Do they do research or work in other areas?
Yes, absolutely. There are school psychologists that do work at the university levels, or do conduct research. They work in higher education. Typically, that would require a a doctorate degree to, to teach graduate level courses, or to be, tenured faculty. But there are other opportunities outside of the school system. Some school psychologists go on to work as LEPs, or licensed educational psychologists, and they work in the private sector, kind of doing assessments for families that may request them. So there are opportunities outside of K through 12, but I would say that the majority of school psychologists, probably more than 90 or 95% of school psychologists, work somewhere in the pre-K through 12 levels.
So would you say the job prospects are pretty good, right? Because everybody's always concerned if they go through and get all of this training and spend all of this time in school, are the job prospects pretty good, pretty stable for people with training in school psychology? I mean, education is K through 12 is not going anywhere, but have you seen any kind of declines or increases in educational needs?
Job prospects are great, and that certainly seems to it'll that certainly seems it seems that it'll be continue to be the case in the near future, and as time continues. But especially with the current pandemic, this is a time when we're seeing even greater need, right? More emotional distress amongst our students, a greater need for systematic school-wide interventions to help our students develop some basic coping skills, right? Some level awareness of minimal awareness of what they're feeling, and how they can manage some of those feelings. That is the that those are the preventative measures that school psychologists can contribute to, and do in many schools. And that need is only going to, it's certainly to remain, and it's certainly in time continuing to increase.
That's great. I mean, it sounds like you must make such a positive and long-lasting impact on these children and their families. So that's really wonderful. And yeah, definitely much needed in normal times, and definitely during COVID-19 for sure. So, I think there might be students that watch this interview and think, wow, this sounds like a really cool job. I think I might want to explore this more. So would you have any advice for an undergraduate if they're interested in what we're talking about today, and I think, maybe this might be a career for me? What should they be thinking about doing now to either learn more about school psychology or to gain experience while they're an undergraduate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the best things that somebody currently working on their undergraduate degree can do is really get to know whether or not they want to work with children, want to work with students. Is it at the elementary level, at the middle school level, or the high school level? Seek out opportunities to work with kids at these different levels. Um, for one reason, to really know whether or not this is a career that might interest you. Right? Can you see yourself working with this population? But also to kind of build a basic level of awareness, as far as what are typically developing skills amongst children, right? What is normal behavior for a second grader, versus a sixth grader? And um, and I think that type of experience is really valuable, as a school psychologist, but also as you're kind of applying for graduate school. a lot of these graduate programs in school psychology want to know, how have you worked with children before, right? Or is school
Mhm.
psychology going to be your very first experience working with children? So you definitely want to seek out those opportunities. Um, so work experience is good. I think seeking out, or really putting in a good faith effort in learning um, research methods is very valuable, right? The you know One of the hallmark features of any great professional in psychology is their ability or their familiarity with evidence-based practices, right? Are you gaining your knowledge of what's a good school psycho or what's good school psychology practices from
Mhm.
hearsay, or are you referring to the literature, and more importantly, do you have the ability to critically analyze the literature to figure out what might be a quality publication. I think so. There's definitely a lot that students can do very early on in their college careers to prepare themselves for a career later on in school psychology.
So it sounds like even types of classes that people take, right? So if a student has an opportunity to take a course in critical thinking, for example, like critical thinking in psychology or philosophy, maybe take a research methods course. And even though those are kind of general courses, they might be able to apply that and tailor that to work with children.
Absolutely. I mean, those foundational courses are very, very important. And I thank you for mentioning critical thinking, because yes, that's definitely a really, really important course. It's one of the skills that is highly valued in a lot of our school psychologists, as you can imagine, right? By nature, the nature of their work is to be a problem solver.
Mm. I like that way of thinking about it, because you're right, that was such a succinct, like clear definition that you gave at the beginning, and I think that will really resonate with a lot of students. So thank you for that. So we're just about at the end of our interview time. Is there anything else that you would like to share about your career with students, or any other parting words of advice that you would like to share?
Um, Geez, that's a great question. I if nothing else, I want to encourage all of our students to really um, you know always put in their best efforts into their academics. You know, to to struggle or to fail is human. All of us kind of go through some of that at some point in time, and what really matters is how we choose to recover and persevere and move forward. So, and I think that message again today for kind of current circumstances is going to be perhaps more important than ever, as more people are experiencing challenges or struggles. Don't let one trip up kind of stop you. Always push forward. Always continue pursuing your education and chasing those dreams.
Well, those are really encouraging words. I think that's a great note for us to end on. So, again, I'd like to thank you so much, Art Garcia, for talking with us today about school psychology. Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.